Hello, everyone, and welcome to our last of our top 100 games of all time. This is Graham,
And this is Dean.
and today we are doing the big heavy hitters, the 10 through 1, the list everybody's been waiting for. Ignore the previous 9. This is the one you want to watch. Um, it
It's a
was,
lot of wasted work.
it was, the previous whatever 9, 10 hours that you spent watching it, it's wasted 10 hours. But it was interesting because just before we recorded this, Dean wanted to see whether he knew my top 10, and he got it. He was able to work out what my top 10 was. Maybe not the correct order, but he knows. I don't think there's going to be very much of a surprise for him. Maybe where they fall, but other than that, when I saw Dean's top 100 or his top 10 list, again, I wasn't overly surprised. There's one or two that I was surprised that it hit his top 10. It was more the order. Like, I did not realize that was Dean's favorite game of all time. It's not what I would have guessed for him, but now that I've looked at it, it doesn't surprise me. So we'll get right into it. As usual, Dean's going to go first. I'm going to go second. And then maybe at the end, I have a couple stats to go through of who, favorite designer type thing. So why don't we get right into it? And we'll start off with your number 10, Dean.
All right, my number 10 was Graham's number 11. So just go back and watch his number 11 again because he did a great job explaining it. But that is Concordia. Concordia, put out by Rio Grande Games. Plays about an hour and a half, 2 to 5 players. And this is all about basically sending your colonists out to into the realms of the Roman Empire to help develop your, I don't know, family, your dynasty, whatever. Really, it centers around collecting resources, selling those resources, and then, of course, the card play in the game. The card play, everyone starts out with the same deck. As you play the cards, you're only going to get to play them once until you play, I think it's the Tribune card, which then allows you to take them all back into your hands. You can add cards into your deck by purchasing them. And then, of course, if you are able to kind of build your deck in a way with certain gods, it's going to give you better in-game scoring, so on and so forth. Like I said, Graham explained it all. I'm not going to belabor the point, but that is my number 10, Concordia.
I mean, there's not much I can say about this game because I just finished talking about it a little while ago. Maybe a week ago for the people that are watching this, but Dean and I are recording these back to back. So, my number 10 is, again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I'm pretty sure this might appear later on in Dean's list. So my number 10 is Mombasa. For me, this is my favorite Fister game. It is about the theme. Well, you're going to be doing a lot of stuff. You're going to be expanding businesses, and you want to be buying stocks in the businesses. There is a little track where you're going to be moving along, which is the book track. There's a diamond track you want to be getting. Typical Euro game, you're going to be collecting resources to expand territories from the different colored companies. Now, you are not a particular company, but you do want to expand that company because of the stocks that you have in them. So you want to be buying stocks. The more stocks you have, they're going to give you bonuses, and you want to make sure that company has a lot of its buildings on the board. Kind of a bit of area. It's not area majority, area control, because there can only be one company in each region, but you can kick a company out. It costs you a little more, but you can kick a company out so you can expand even further. Like I said, this is my favorite Fister game, and Dean's going to be talking about it later. So we'll just leave it at that.
How presumptuous. All right, very good. My number 9 is a game that Graham talked about way back early on in his list. So obviously he likes it, but he doesn't like it as much as I do. And that is Clans of Caledonia. Clans of Caledonia, put out by Karma Games. I think you play it solo. Plays 1 to 4 players, about an hour, 2 hours, and I guess it's getting closer to the heavy end. It's a 3.44 for the weight. This is one that is, okay, it's set in Scotland. You're playing a clan, and each clan, if you use the clan tiles, is going to give you I wouldn't say it's going to force you to do something, but certainly going to incentivize you to follow a certain path. Maybe you're going to be more involved with this commodity market. Maybe you're going to, want to produce a lot of milk because you can sell it. Maybe you want to produce a lot of whiskey because you can sell it for a higher price. So it's going to kind of lead you down a path, but it's not going to box you in that you can't do other things. And for this game, it's really going to center around a lot of that commodity speculation, that market board. Selling and buying is going to influence the prices, and then of course money in this game. Well, you start out with quite a bit of money. Money is something that's going to drive your ability to win, because you're going to have to use it to put things out onto the map, because every hex has a price, and then every time you reveal take a meeple off of your board, whether it's a pig or a cow or whatever, or maybe it's a worker, those are going to cost you money to do that as well. The key in this game is you're trying to get things off of your player board to reveal the spaces underneath, which are going to give you either more money or different resources. So the ability to generate money is key in this game. You can upgrade your worker, which will give you a better return on your money if they're out there mining. You can make what is it? Wheat. You can make milk. Well, I can't remember if it's butter. I don't think it's butter. But of course you have cows and so on and so forth. There's a lot going on in this game as well. I wouldn't say it's necessarily as much of a point salad game, but it's one where you can dabble in a couple different things, but you're probably going to want to focus on at least narrow your focus down a little bit to be more efficient. There's limitations as to movement on the map, on the modular map board, based off of the water barriers, but you can increase your ability to cross water barriers in this game. You're going to manipulate not only the commodities market, but you're going to manipulate the pricing of, I think it's tobacco, cotton, and sugarcane. And as you fulfill orders, you're going to get these bonus tiles, and the bonus tiles will manipulate those three commodities, but they'll also give you basically shares or stock in those commodities as well. And so if I have a bunch of sugarcane stock, for lack of a better term, then at the end of the game, I don't want sugarcane to be the farthest along the track. The commodity that is the least farthest along the track is going to score more victory points per share. The one that's farthest along the track is going to score less points per share. So it's one of those where, yes, I've got a ton of shares in this, but every time someone else takes shares in as well, it's driving the price farther up, which is worse for me. So it's kind of an interesting aspect of the game. And then each round is going to have a specific scoring tile associated with that round. So you know how each round is going to score, so you can work towards that as well. It's a really interesting game. The map board at the beginning looks like it's open and spacious, but it gets tight pretty fast. People start boxing each other in. So it has that interesting aspect of there's player interaction because you're boxing each other in. But if I build next to, say, one of Graham's tokens, then I might be able to buy one of the commodities that space generates. So I really enjoy it. That is Clans of Caledonia by Karma Games, my number 9.
Really good, solid game. So Dean was talking about farming, so I figured I'd continue the trend. So my number 9 is probably the granddaddy of farming games, and this is Agricola. I got this game kind of early on in my gaming career because it's been around for quite a long time. And it's about farming. You have a farmhouse, you have a farm field, you're going to be planting crops, you're going to be raising animals, you want to be expanding your family. And it's a worker placement game. So as the game goes on, more worker placement places open up. And there's some areas like the fishing, which is going to get more fish each round if no one takes it. The reason why this is this high on my list is because the gameplay itself it's fun, but you have a whole bunch of cards that come in the box that are the occupation cards. And you're only going to be playing with a certain number of occupation cards per game. It's very, very few. And even of those, you're only going to be able to do 1, maybe 2 of those occupation cards. And those occupation cards will alter up how you approach the game. Not drastically, but just a little bit. You may be slightly better at one thing, or thing is going to cost you a little more, or you get a little more fish when you go fishing, those type of things. I love that, and they've come out with so many expansions for different types of decks, and you can get the different occupation cards for how you want to play the game. You want to play an aggressive game where you are actively going against other players, a little more, maybe take that. You can play that type of deck. There's one for that. If you prefer not to have any player interaction, that you prefer just to kind of work on your own board and not have to worry about what other people do, there's a deck of occupation cards for that. You want to mix, there's a deck of occupations for that. A whole bunch of occupation cards. You only ever see a fraction each game you play. Just to get through all the cards in the base box, I don't know how many times you'd have to play. But the idea is just so simple. But like a Rosenberg game, you have to feed your people. You don't feed your people, you have to take a card for that. And you don't want to be stuck with that card. But there's actually a strategy of taking all the pauper cards. Because there's only so many in the game. Once all those are given out, you can't take any more. Also, at the end of the game, it's not only how many sheep you have, but if you don't have any sheep, you get negative points. So you want to have some sheep, but you also want to have some horses and some pigs and some bulls, because if you don't have them, you're going to be worth negative points. But you also need to be expanding on your farm area. But if you want to have different animals, then you have to have fences. And the fence for each area that you can have one animal there. And your animals will breed at the end of the round. If you have more than 2 sheep, then you get an extra sheep at the end of the round. But you also maybe want to convert them to meat. So you can feed your people, because the meat will feed more people than the vegetables will. But again, it's when people talk about Euro games, this is one of the games that kind of kicked this whole Euro game thing off. That it's a modern classic, if you want to call that. It's been ragged on. Other people have liked Caverna, which took the idea of Agricola and kind of expanded it a little bit. But for me, I like the simplicity of Agricola. I love the variety of every time I play Agricola, I see new occupations which I haven't played with before, and just trying to see how they're going to work. I just love it. So this is my number 9, Agricola.
Yeah, it's Caverna Light, sure. Yeah, I mean, I've never played it, so I can't say. I just always have enjoyed Caverna and always thought it was kind of going backwards to play Agricola. So I know, shocker.
It's another classic game you have not played.
I know. Well, I'm a classic. I don't want to play the classics. All right, what am I at here? My number 8 is a game that is a GMT game. It is my highest ranked GMT game, perhaps, and that is Combat Commander. Combat Commander is set in World War II. It is a squad level, maybe platoon level, tactical game. It's a hex encounter map, but it is one it's a card-driven game. Talk a lot about card-driven games. I love the mechanism, and this is one of the best implementations of it. Yes, it does look like a war game. There are chits out on a hex board, but the maps are small. The counter size for a scenario is small. So it's not like you're talking maybe, I don't know, 20 or 30 chits out on the board. It is one where everything centers around the use of those cards. There's no dice. The die roll results are resolved by what's on the card. You can use the cards to give your troops orders. You can use the cards to hold them back and use them as reactionary cards. And when a round ends or when the game it's variable. It's all dependent on the cards and who's going to kind of push it by burning through their deck or whatever. I really enjoy this game. There's so many scenarios. There's so many maps. If you want to play a European theater game or a Mediterranean theater or an Eastern Front or a Pacific, or there's even one that centers around the Resistance, you name it, you're going to find it in this game. And it plays fast for the most part, depending on the size of the scenario. But every nation has a different deck. They have different abilities for their troops. They have veterans. They have green troops. But it's primarily infantry. There's no armor per se. The artillery is kind of abstracted out a little bit, but it's a very low level infantry action tactical game. I enjoy it. I would play it every day if given the opportunity, but I don't get to play it as much. There is no, you can play it on Vassal. I'm just not a huge Vassal fan. So there's that. But anyways, that's my number 8, GMT's Combat Commander. You pick the iteration you want because they're all good.
Yeah, I have Combat Commander Europe, which is the picture I'm showing. I have played a quarter of a game of this, and because both of us had never played this type of game before, so it was a matter of kind of reading the rules and trying to figure out how to play, and we just said, I think I need to go back and do this almost like a solo. Let me set it up. I just never got around to it. So Dean says he'll play it any time, so hopefully next time you and I get together, if that's ever going to happen again, we can sit down and we can play this, because I have it. I've heard lots of really good things about it. I've heard that this is the game that you could convert, Euro gamers to war gamers. Like, this is the kind of one that's in the middle. It's not a super heavy war game, but it's still war themed. It's got some of the mechanisms, but if you want to dabble your toes in war games, Combat Commander's a good place to start. So my number 8 was on Dean's 10 through or 11 through 20. So we just talked about this not too long ago, and this is Grand Austria Hotel. This one I've played an awful lot of two players, but I have played it all player counts. I've actually played it with Dean down at Dice Tower Con a couple of years ago, and it is a game which you are trying to get people to come to your cafe, because you are a cafe / hotel owner. They're going to come to your cafe, and you want them to go into a room, and each person is going to be color coded. There's green, there's blue, there's red, and yellow. And of course, the yellow people will only go in yellow rooms, red will only go in red rooms, green will go in any room. But they come and eat first, and they're not going to move into the room until they finish eating. And beginning of each round, you're going to take a certain number of dice based on the player count, roll them all, and you're going to separate them all to the number. So all the ones go for the one action, which is collecting the different types of food. All the twos go under the drink column. Then the 3s and 4s and 5s and 6 all go into their own separate column. It's going to go like a snake draft. So I go first, then Dean, then Lella picks a second die, then Dean, then back to me. So on my turn, I'm going to take one of the dice from whatever number, and the strength of the action I take is based on how many dice are in that action. So if I take a 1, which is food, and let's say there are 5 dice, I can take up to 5 food. And there's pastries and there's cakes. I believe it's the cakes are harder to get. So you have to take one type of food as equal or more than the other one of a type of food. So if I have 5, I can take, let's say, 3 pastries and a maximum of 2 cakes. So if I need a whole bunch of cakes, they're really hard to get. But those people that are sitting in my cafe are going to be worth more points, more money when they go sit. Each person you have in your cafe will more than likely give you a benefit when they get sent to a room. You're also going to have a hand of helper cards. These are your staff of the building, which you can hire for an action on the board. You take number 4, I think it's number 4, and you can hire someone from your hand, and it will tell you how much money you need to spend to get that person. But for each strength that action you're taking reduces the cost. The workers can be a one-time thing. They may just give you food. They could be an ongoing ability, such as, you can keep food from round to round. It doesn't go bad. You're trying to do all of this because the Emperor is coming. The Emperor is going to be coming 3 times during the game, and he's going to tell you at the beginning of the game, you kind of set it up to say, the first time the Emperor shows up, he wants to see, that you have more than 3 yellow rooms closed, for example. So you've moved 3 people from your cafe into the yellow rooms. And if you don't do that, you're going to get a penalty. So there's going to be 3 of these that are set up during the game. And of course, the penalties get worse and worse as you go along. The last one is usually losing a whole bunch of victory points. The annoying part is quite often these things, when after the Emperor comes, you're reset on one of the tracks. I mean, you got to work to building that track back up so you can meet the deadline that the Emperor is requiring from you. It is a fantastic game. It works at all player counts. A whole lot of fun. I love that dice mechanism of taking one of the die and the strength of the action is there. I also like the ability that you can pass. You can say, there's none of the dice here I want. So once everybody else has finished taking their dice, you will get to re-roll all the dice that are left and do the same type of thing. So hopefully, if you really need lots of food and there's no food dice there, you can pass and re-roll all the dice again and hopefully get food. The problem is you lose one of the dice from the pool. So, a lot of fun. Quick game. Lella and I played this game in probably 45 minutes to an hour maximum for a 2-player game. We have been known to sit down and play this and then, okay, let's play this again. Spend another hour playing this game. So this is my number 8, Grand Austria Hotel.
That is an excellent choice and a much better explanation than I did. So, all right, my number seven is a game that was already on Graham's list way back early on, I think, and that is London, second edition specifically. London by Osprey Games is a Martin Wallace game, 2 to 4 players, plays about an hour, hour and a half, and midweight. This is all it's all about card drafting. It's card drafting, hand management. You are trying to rebuild the city of London after the Great Fire. How are you going to do this? You're going to draft cards on your turn to um, play into your hand, but you're eventually going to play them down into a kind of a tableau. It's kind of your cityscape, and you can have a smaller city with maybe only 4 stacks of cards. You can have a bigger city with maybe 6, 7, 8 cards, but eventually you're going to have to do what they call run the cards. And when you run the cards, you're going to get the actions that are on the cards. And most of them are probably going to be good for you, but some of them are going to have some negative effects because they're going to generate some poverty. They could be ones where they're a one-time use, so you're going to flip them over and you're not going to get to use it again. But every time you run your city, you are going to be generating poverty. And poverty in this game can be very detrimental. So, for example, when you run your city, um, again, you're gonna want to decide, you want to run a small city or a big city, because every time you run it, the number of cards that you run, say you have 7, that's going to generate poverty. But at the same time, you don't want to hold a bunch of cards in your hand and run a really short city, because one, you get less benefits from it, but you're also going to generate poverty for every card in your hand. And then, of course, you're going to generate poverty for like every $10 in loans that you have. There's lots of ways you're going to generate poverty. There are ways that you can alleviate it. Some abilities will allow you to remove poverty, and you can also decide to add to your cityscape by purchasing boroughs. And you decide, I want to purchase a borough north of the Thames or south of the Thames. You can replace boroughs, and most boroughs are going to give you a benefit of some kind. Some are a little more expensive than others. Some of them will give you an ability as soon as you purchase it. Some will be more of an ongoing thing. So there's not a ton going on in the game, but there's a lot of nuances as to which cards work better with other cards. And sometimes you just have to bite the bullet. I need this card, but because maybe it's got a lot of victory points, or I need this ability, but man, it's going to generate some poverty. I just got to suck it up and I got to take the poverty. Because the key with poverty is that as long as you have the least amount of poverty, you're fine. Because at the end of the game, everyone counts up their poverty. If I have less than Graham, all my poverty goes away. And then let's say I had 20 poverty and Graham had 30 poverty. All my 20 go away and Graham gets to skim off 20 of his and only have the difference. And then he's going to look at the difference. So now he's got 10 left, and he's going to look to see how many victory points he loses. So I know some people don't like it because of the poverty aspect. I think the poverty aspect is what makes the game, personally. But that's London, second edition by Osprey Games, my number 7.
Yep, like I said, good choice. Already on my list. And one that's probably not high on my list because I haven't got a chance to play it more often. I think if I played it more, it might go higher on my list. So my number 7 is a game that I've been saying this a lot for the last, this top 20 games. I don't think Dean has played.
What are you saying? Are you criticizing my taste?
No, not yet. Well, yes, I am. Okay. So my number 7 is Dominant Species. This is a game, again, this is another early game that I played. Very first Dice Tower I went to, I was taught this game because I really wanted to try it. The rulebook was intimidating. I got it, found someone who was going to teach me the game, and we played it. Got home, pulled up my copy of the game, realized that she made a couple mistakes when she was teaching it to me, but I got enough of the game to kind of venture to try this on myself. As again, early on in my gaming career, so I hadn't played as many games. You're going to be taking one of the species. You can be insects. You could be reptiles, birds. And each of them starts with a different ability. The goal of the game is to basically be the best species, be the most dominant species. Each one is going to have different abilities. So insects are better on or live in, let's say, the forest tiles. Because the board's going to be made up of a bunch of hexes, which all represent the different types of landscapes. So you're going to have forest, you're going to have tundra, you're going to have the plains, whatever else. And your species will generally start in one of those areas and say that's where they thrive. You're going to have so many action point markers that you're going to be placing on the board. So during the first phase, everybody's going to be in turn order, be placing their action markers out. So you want to do speciation or migration or glaciation, things like that are going to alter how your species works. Once everybody's finished placing them, you are then going to activate them from top to bottom based on the actions that you've selected. Then there's going to be event cards, and the event cards can be fairly nasty. You can have a meteorite that kind of crashes and destroys a whole bunch of the world. But hopefully you are diverse enough that you're able to thrive and continue. It is a nasty game. You're trying to take over areas on the board. You're trying to become the most dominant species in all the different areas, and this is how you get the points. There are cards you're going to be playing that can affect the game board and other players. And of course, you want to be getting to the actions where other people want to get to before they get to. It's a whole lot of fun. It is a fairly nasty game. It is definitely a more complex game, and one that, unfortunately, I don't get enough chances to play this. This used to be my number 1, number 2 game of all time, and it is starting to slip just because I haven't played it in a while. In my gaming group, this doesn't really fit. When I used to have Megan around to play with, she also enjoyed Dominant Species. So it was much easier to get to the table. But my wife doesn't like this game as much as I do, so it doesn't come to the table a lot because it is on the heavier side. It's not just after dinner, before we go to bed, let's take out Dominant Species. This is by the way, tomorrow we're going to play Dominant Species for like 3 hours in the afternoon. And it's a big commitment, so it doesn't hit the table as much, but it is my number 7 Dominant Species.
Yeah, this is on my, I guess if I had a bucket list of games to play, this would be on it. It's a GMT game, so I think I'm obligated to have to probably play it, but it sounds interesting. I like the idea of it. So it's just not one that fits the game group that I generally play with. So hence it has not been played. All right, my number 6 is a game that has consistently been in about this same area for the last few years. It was number 6 in 2017. It was number 4 in 2018. It's back to number 6 this year, and that is Arkham Horror, the card game by Fantasy Flight Games. So this is one of their living card games. It's a pure co-op. I've only ever played it solo though, but it does play 2-player. I don't know if you can play it more than that. I think it just says 1 to 2. When I play it solo, I generally play 2 characters, but this is one where it's not only some deck construction, which generally is not something that I care for. It's not a ton of it. I mean, you can play kind of they kind of have each investigator kind of has their preset kind of cards that they need to have, and then you can manipulate it and you can add stuff to it as you play through the campaign with experience points. But for me, that's where the game takes off, because this is a campaign game. Yes, there are individual scenarios, and they're often quite good and they're hard, but it thrives because it's a campaign style. Most of the campaigns are about 6 different scenarios. And I mean, you can go back, I guess, and replay them with different investigators and stuff like this. But to me, this is a game where if I play this, if I'm on the road in a hotel room, I can sit down and play this on a Sunday, and I will totally look up and it'll have been 6, 7, 8 hours later, and I'm still kind of playing it. I can just kind of lose myself in this game and in the stories and the and sometimes the trials and tribulations of pulling really bad chits at the wrong time. But I just really enjoy this game. It's one where I wouldn't be opposed to playing it 2-player, but I just really enjoy it as a solo game. And I love the Lovecraftian theme. I like the style. So if you played Lord of the Rings card game from Fantasy Flight, it's kind of is maybe kind of the spiritual successor. It plays better, I think, as a solo game than that game did, from what people say. I didn't play it, but yeah, if you're looking for, I mean, it's going to be a money pit. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of stuff for it. I don't think you have to buy it all per se, but if you're looking for something, if you love a Lovecraftian theme and you want a good solo experience and you want an immersive story, Arkham Horror, the living card game, is definitely, for me, it scratches all those itches.
Yeah, this is a game that I have played. I really enjoyed my play of it. I just haven't played anymore. But now, luckily, Dean said he's going to ship me all of his expansions so I can play his copy. But I just have the base game. I just have the original Arkham Horror the card game base box. And that was enjoyable. I also liked. I have no idea whether this continues through other modules, but how you did in those scenarios kind of affected what happened in the future scenarios of the same package base
Mm-hmm.
box. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the shipment that Dean's sending me.
Yeah, wait outside for it. It'll be right there.
So my number 6 is kind of it's a placeholder. I have a game here, but it kind of represents a whole series of games. So this is, I've put Empire Builder. This is the Crayon Rail system. It's called Crayon Rails because you have a plasticized map that you play on, and you're actually using crayons to draw on the map where your train route goes. Now, I think my favorite, maybe the Mars map, the Martian Rails. I do like the India map as well. I have quite a few of these maps, but I figured I'd put the kind of the one that kind of was the first, which is Empire Builder, 1982. Unfortunately, this is a Mayfair game, and Mayfair games have always been the butt of jokes when it comes to components, and unfortunately, they are pretty crappy components in this game. You have a set of cards, you have a bunch of little tiny poker chips, which you have to sticker, and there will be a whole bunch of different resources. It could be like wheat and steel and iron and water, whatever else, passengers. And you're going to be getting there are going to be cards that you're going to be having in front of you, which says you want to deliver water to this city, and you're going to gain so many millions of dollars. And you start off with some money, but the only way you're going to get more money is by delivering goods. And you're going to deliver goods by building your rail to connect to that city. But every time you build a line of your rail, it's going to cost you money. And if it's across plains, it's $1 million. You want to go through a forest or over mountains, it's going to cost you additional millions of dollars. So it could get very expensive to deliver some of these goods to a particular city, but then the payoff is probably a lot higher. And the further across the board it is, again, the board's going to have to, the payout's going to be even higher. It's a fairly simple game. I mean, that's all you're doing. You're trying to make the connections, run your train from point A to point B with the goods on them. So you'll need to go pick up the goods and then run your train to deliver the goods. There are event cards that are going to happen every once in a while. And the event cards could be, no one can do, there's a snowstorm in the Rockies, so you can't make any deliveries to the Rockies. It could also be that there's a rock slide or river overflows, and all the tracks that go across that river need to be rebuilt because they're now all being washed away. Those can be annoying, and it's just one of those things you have to realize going into these games that there are some events that are going to be negatively affect you, and they could kind of set you back. The game is also not short. Most of the time when I play one of these games, it's going to last 2 to 3 hours. But I thoroughly enjoy my time playing these. I love these games. Every time I see one in the store that I don't have, I buy, which is why I think I have, I'd say 70% of the Crown Rail games out there now. There's some, they used to just sell them in little tubes. But I just love them. Each one that you play will add something different. For example, the Mars map. Mars map, they've basically taken Mars and kind of spread it out two-dimensional. So you have, on the southern and northern part, there's little like tunnels. So you can build up and kind of jump across a whole bunch of different areas to get to it. The India map has different mountains you need to cross, which are very expensive to go across. So Iron Dragon I think is my favorite one. Iron Dragon kind of adds a fantasy element to it, and that actually has underground railroads. But you have to pay to go through it, but they're faster to get around. But if you have different conductors on your train, they maybe give you a bonus to going underground. So like I said, each one of them varies up the gameplay slightly, but there's still basics of picking stuff up, drawing your train track to deliver it as efficiently as possible. And quite often you want to say, I have 2 cards that both require, let's say, water. So I need to go pick up 2 water from this location, and I can move my train to deliver it here, then deliver it here. And it's going to be a whole bunch of points without a whole bunch of money, without me having to pay out a whole bunch of money. But then you probably want to upgrade your train because, of course, you want to upgrade your train so it goes faster. Otherwise, your train moves very slow. So I love all these games. They're definitely not everyone's cup of tea. If you're looking for a good looking game, look elsewhere. These are ugly games, but I love this style of game. So my number 6 is Empire Builder slash Martian Rail slash India Rail slash China Rail slash Iron Dragon. They're all fantastic. Pick any of them if this sounds interesting, and hopefully you'll enjoy them. So that is my number 6, the Crayon Rail system.
Yeah, I own one. I think I have Empire Builder, but I think no, I have Euro Rails. That's what I have, but I haven't played it. I think you're right. This is one where those games get a lot of knocks on them just because they're crayon games and they look hideous. Um, but the way you rave about them, I definitely want to try it because um, I think I might like it. I don't know. I mean, I couldn't say for sure that I would, but I'd be willing to give it a whirl. All right, my number four, or I'm sorry, my number five is a game that I know you've played, and I think you like it, but you probably just haven't played it enough to rank it this high. But that is Riverboat. Riverboat by Lookout Games or Mayfair. I think Lookout Games officially did it. 2 to 4 players, 90 minutes. It's right around a 3, maybe a little less. And this is a game that is really, for me, it's just so smooth. It's card drafting. It's some set collection. It's you're placing some vegetable tiles out on your little board, and it has some different shaded areas where of course you'll get scoring bonuses if you cover up one whole area, this and that, and of course that also determines where you're going to be able to place your meeples because different cards are going to be flipped each turn, which are going to say, okay, place a meeple in this shaded area, place a meeple in this shaded area, so on and so forth. But for me, past that, this game is all about the drafting of the phase cards. So in this game, each person is going to select a card that is going to make them the first player to act in a certain phase of the game. Maybe you want to be the first person to act in harvesting, so you're going to pick that phase card. And maybe you're going to want to be the first person to act in the harbor section where you're going to ship stuff. And so whoever is the first player taking that action is going to get a bonus. And of course, it's gonna shift from round to round as far as what may be more important to you. And so there's not only I need to take this action first, but then you're kind of looking to see what who's taking the action that you may be your second choice, and where do you fall in the pecking order as far as trying to take that action yourself. I really enjoy that aspect of the game. The rest of it is pretty standard. It kind of has a little bit of a I'd say a heaven and ale vibe in the fact that you need to hold on just a second.
Oh, Dean's going off for dog issues. Got a couple dogs at his place. I know his dog is always around him. I'm gonna go see what the dog's up to. Last time we did this, his dog was chewing on some plastic razor or something like that. So I'm sure Dean's gonna come back and tell us what the dog got into this time. I know his dog's big enough that it can take stuff off the counter, and Dean has often turned around and had his lunch at least licked by his dog. Assuming he still eats it. I don't have a dog, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. I'll tell you that Riverboat's not on my list. I have played it, and Dean's right, I haven't played it enough. But I do really enjoy what he was talking about, the whole action selection of which one do you want to have first pick on. Because even when you're selecting the vegetables, there are double and single vegetables, and of course you want to group them all together, so being first that round is important. Anyway, Dean's back, so he can continue talking about it.
Sorry about that. My dog was tearing up a hat. So Graham probably explained a lot of it. I will say in this one, the heaven and ale vibe kind of is for me anyways, is with the harbor master. And that harbor master is, you've got to move that harbor master along the track, because when you harvest, let's say I harvest 7 carrots. because you have to harvest all the same produce type at one time. So if I harvest 7, I can take a size 7 ship, which is going to be, more victory points, whatever. But here's the key: if I have all these high level ships, 7, 8s, 9s, whatever, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the game, if I haven't moved my harbor master far enough along that dock to get past those ships, or to those ships, or further past, those ships are never going to score for me. And so it doesn't do me any good if I'm not also focusing on my harbor master moving up. And if I'm not the player that has moved the farthest along the dock, then those ships are only going to score half the points, if I can even score them. So you cannot neglect that harbor master, and that's probably one of the things that early on a lot of people do is they don't worry too much about it. But there's only so many ways you can move that harbor master up. So sometimes you have to draft that phase card that's going to allow you to do it or get the extra movements. And then finally, at the end of the game, you're looking to, during the course of the game, you're going to be sending people downriver to New Orleans, because you want to get people down there, because you're going to score victory points at the end of the game. Person who has the most people down there is going to get a substantial amount of points. I think it's like 20 points. And then, of course, the more you have down there, the more it gives you benefits. And then the final thing, and Graham probably talked about it, was, you're going to add wells, you're going to add barns, you're going to have surveyor, little green meeples that you're going to put out there that are going to allow you to do different things. There's a lot of stuff going on in this game. Was this on your list early on or not?
No.
I don't think it was. No. I really enjoy this game. I think it's a really, like I said, I think it's a really smooth implementation of a worker placement, tile placement game. And I don't know, it seems like it's pretty well overlooked, at least when it came out. I think it was up for Spiel, didn't win, which I think was a travesty. But I really like this game. I like it a lot. That is Riverboat.
I already talked about it while you're away, so we'll just
Thank
go on to my my number 5, and that is yes, it's my top rated Vidal Lacerda game. So this is Lisboa. It was already on Dean's list. We already discussed this. Again, this is another heavy game. When you Lisboa has been destroyed by, was it?
It was like a fire, and
a tidal wave, earthquake.
Yeah,
basically destroyed, and you are one of the town builders trying to rebuild the town. You want to be going and talking to the government, essentially, and you want to be shipping goods. You want to go talk to the government to do certain actions. You want to be building the new houses. So you want to rebuild Lisboa, and you want to have different types of houses that sell different things on different streets, essentially, which way they're going to be facing. Because you can score some streets, and you say, okay, I have this building and this building facing the street, so I get to collect these type of things. It is a fairly tight game, and it's a game that's not easy to get into, because the action you take dictates the other actions you're going to be taking in the round. So you can't really change it up, so you really have to figure out at the beginning what you want to do. So if I play this card, it means I have to kind of do this as a secondary action. But if I want to change what that secondary action is, I have to make sure that I'm taking the right decision to do the first action. And it's that whole idea of you need to do A before B, before C, before D. So if D is your final goal, how do you work the path to get there? And like I said, it's definitely a heavier game. It is a slightly longer game. And again, I have an awful lot of games on my list, and especially in this top 20, that you're not going to just sit down and pick up the rulebook and start playing in a couple of minutes. This does take some time to learn. It took me several plays to learn it, and even when I taught Dean and our friend Eric, it's still there's a lot to digest when you're new to this game. When someone's teaching this game, it's like, oh, you need to do this. Oh, and this is how this works, and this is how you get buildings out, this is how you score, this is how you get cards, this is how you ship, this is how you get your points, this is how you do that. And you need to know all of it because it's all intertwined. You can't just ignore shipping because you need shipping. You can't ignore the buildings because you need buildings. You can't ignore, going to talk to the governors, because everything is intertwined. You need to understand how everything is intertwined. But again, I love that type of stuff. I love when there's a whole bunch of gears that all need to work together to come up with basically the final part of Lisboa. But yeah, it is just a fantastic game. I think his best. I think I had The Gallerist on my list as well, but this Lisboa for me is all of his games. Lisboa was kind of on the top pedestal, and a lot of his other games are significantly below that. So Lisboa is definitely my favorite of his game, and it's my number 5 game of all time.
Yeah, this was on my list earlier. This game makes my head hurt so bad. I mean, I enjoy playing it, but there's just there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of interaction, like Graham said, between the choices you make. And I always feel like I'm way behind in this game, which I usually am. So it's not that I'm wrong, but I do enjoy the game quite a bit. So um, yeah, Lisboa. All right, my number 4 is a game that I don't know where Graham thought this game would fall on my list, if it would be this high. I know he doesn't feel that it should be this high or even on a list, but I don't know. I don't know his feelings as far as the placement. But that is Lorenzo El Magnifico by Cranio Creations or Simon. 2 to 4 players.
Uh,
2 to 4 players. Plays about an hour, maybe 2 hours, and it's a 3.3 weight. But this is, I don't know. For me, I could have easily maybe put this as my number 1, but I think because it's just so easy for me, um, maybe it dropped it down. This is a card drafting. Um, yes, there are dice in it, but the dice are everyone's going to suffer or benefit with the value of the dice that are rolled. You can manipulate that, and if you don't plan for the manipulation, that's your own fault, Graham. Um, and then, of course, there's some variable player powers with the leaders and stuff like that. But it's a dice placement game, so everyone's gonna, or not really dice placement. It's a worker placement, but you're using the value of the die to determine what they can do. So everyone is an Italian family, Italian noble family, trying to increase their wealth, their fame, so on and so forth. And you have your family members, and each of your family members, there's 3 that are associated with I think it's 3 colored dice that are associated with the dice that are going to be rolled. You have a generic family member who has a 0 value at all times. So if my orange family member, the orange die is a 3, it has a 3 value. I then am going to place my family members out on the board in these different towers, drafting cards or selecting cards. And some of them you're going to have a minimum value die roll or die value of a 3 or 2 or 5 or 6 or maybe even more. They can be manipulated by your extra servants that you keep. For everyone that you play, it's going to add a 1 to the die value. So they can be manipulated. You can focus on building, like basically an industry where you're going to have a little engine building component to your player board. And maybe you have, one that's going to generate ore or stone, maybe one that generates, I'm trying to think what else is in there. There's wood, I think. But anyway, so you have that aspect where you can buy these cards and produce resources every time you run your engine. And then you have a military aspect. You're trying to build up your military might or influence, and you're taking over the lands. There's different ways that you can score points. The more land you take, obviously, the more points you're going to score. The higher up on the military track, you're gonna get points that way. And there's a couple expansions. Well, there's one expansion for it, House of Renaissance, which I'm trying to think if there's any. Is there a second one coming out? I can't remember if there's a second one or not. They have the card game version of it as well. But I enjoy this game because, to me, I think it's pretty straightforward. You kind of know what you need to do. You kind of know what you're focusing on if you're trying to run your engine. And the cool thing about running the engine is, say you're gonna allot one of your family members to do it. Again, it's going to depend on the value of the die that's going to determine how many of the things in your engine you can run. If you put a 6 in there, then you're probably going to be able to run everything. But if you only put a 2, you can only run the cards that are of 2 value or less. And it'll tell you on the card what you need to be able to run it. I just enjoy it. And much like Grand Austria Hotel, same designers, you have to worry about the Pope coming to visit. And will you have enough papal influence? If you don't, then you may get excommunicated. If you do and you choose not to pay homage to the Pope, you'll get excommunicated. But there's that balance of, because if you do pay, if you do whatever they call it, if you pay the Pope, you're going to lose all your work you've made on the papal track, and you're going to go back to 0. But you're going to get the victory points for the spot that you're on. but maybe you don't want to. Maybe you want to keep going further up because you're going to score more victory points at the end of the game. If you get excommunicated, you're going to get an ongoing penalty for the rest of the game, and it could be a -2 for something, or it could be you no longer get this benefit. And it'll tell you out on the board what you're going to get, and there's different tiles that you can put out there. So sometimes it's a benefit not to pay homage to the Pope and just suck it up and be excommunicated, because maybe that thing that's going to be the penalty is not really something you're focusing on. I don't know. I could go on and on about it, but I really enjoy the game. I know Graeme doesn't, but there's no accounting for taste when it comes to our list. So that is my number 4, Lorenzo el Magnifico.
I think it's just as high on this list just to spite me.
Definitely not.
I think if I loved this game, it would be much lower on your list. We can. There's one aspect of this game I really don't like, which is the randomness of the die roll. And you say yes, you should be able to plan for it, but then that means everybody should be doing the same thing all the time. So everybody should be doing exactly the same thing. Therefore, you're all planning for it. So let's say you don't. Let's say you want to differentiate yourself. Then that bad die roll you haven't planned for, because this wasn't your round to plan for. If all you're doing is planning for a bad die roll, you're not going to get anywhere. But if I don't plan for it and it pays off and I get to do a really big round, then that's great. But I just don't like that it's either everyone has to do the same so that bad die roll doesn't affect anybody, or you try and branch off on yourself and you may or may not be penalized for it by the bad die roll, which I'm not a big fan of. Anyway, we're not going to talk about why this is an incorrect addition to your list.
All right, go on to your incorrect one.
Well,
what's your number 3?
Number 4.
Number 4, yeah.
So my number 4 can't be incorrect because it was already on your list.
I can change my mind.
So this is a splatter game, and it's not the highest splatter game on my list. This is Antiquity. This is actually one of the... When I bought Antiquity, I didn't think too much about it. And I started playing the other splatter games. I said, let's go back to play Antiquity. And the more I play this, the more I'm really enjoying Antiquity. If you've never played a splatter game, Dean talked about this one before. Splatter games are known for very little randomness to no randomness. Usually there's just some randomness in the setup. So this one, the way the board's set up is random. Once you've selected where your city is, there's no more randomness. If you don't do well, it's your own fault. Problem is, there's so much to be done in this game that it's very difficult to be on top of everything you need to control. You need to have the workers to activate your buildings. You need to be able to build new buildings. You need to be expanding your lands. You need to be building the inn so your area of influence expands. But all this functionality that you're getting from your buildings causes pollution. And managing your pollution is a huge, huge aspect of Antiquity. You also don't know what the end of game scoring is going to be. Because at the beginning of the game, no one has, this is how the game's going to end. This is how you win. So this game isn't victory points. This is, when you meet a condition, you're going to win. The problem is you don't know what that condition is. When you build your church, you dedicate your church to one of the saints. Depending on which saint you designate your church to, that saint will then tell you, this is how you will win. So it could be that you need to encompass another player's area so they can't expand anymore. It could be that you have to build one of every building. It could be that you need to, found 3 cities. There's going to be a bunch of different things. And each one that you're only going to pick one, and whichever one you do is going to give you not only your end of game, how you're going to win, it's also going to give you a special ability. There's going to be some that you can store infinite amount of food in your church. You don't need a storeroom. Because normally your food expires, it goes bad. But if you go towards this saint, they will allow you to have more food. There's going to be other saints who are going to do different abilities for you. There's also one saint that you can go to, which you get everybody's ability. Problem is, you need to go have 3 things that you complete, or is it 2? It's either 2 or 3 end game things that you have to have triggered to actually win. So if I go to one saint, it could be that I have to get one of each building. This really powerful saint says not only do you have to have one of each building, you also have to have encompass cut off someone else, and you also have to have done this. Yes, you get a whole bunch of abilities, but it makes it harder to win. I have seen someone win like that. But again, it is a game where you need to be looking at every single option, every single turn, and you are planning behind the little player screen, going, "Okay, I want to put a person here, and go out to." Oh, but wait a minute! I need to have someone here so I can get food. Oh, I need to man my storeroom so I can actually store the food. Oh, but I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do this. And of course, all the building pieces are like Tetris shapes, and you're trying to all fit them onto your board. And once they're down, you can't move them unless you dedicate to a certain saint, which allows you to rearrange your city, make it more efficient. Or you can start another city and have buildings in there. But whatever buildings you want to use, you have to man. And you also need the resources, which means placing your people out in the fields to be a farmer or a fisherman or whatever else. There's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to be done. Several different ways to win. Every time you play this, if you take dedicate to a different saint, you're going to be approaching the game completely different. But again, if you don't win, more than likely because you didn't do something properly. No die roll, there's no card flips, there's no luck with a draw. It's your own fault if you don't win. So this is my number 4, Antiquity.
Excellent choice. I really enjoy that game, and I think I think right now, basically once a year is about how often I get to play it. If I played it more, it would probably be higher up. But yeah, it's the only spot I've played, but I do enjoy it. So excellent choice. All right, my number 3 is a game that was not on Graham's list, and I don't think it'll be on his list. I know it won't be on his list, and that is Teach You. Teach You is a little card game. It's a trick-taking, ladder-climbing game that is played in partners. And to me, it kind of gives me that vibe of growing up playing euchre. There's limited communication, as far as what you can discuss with your partner, which is really not a whole lot. But it gives that same vibe. The difference is it's not just a typical trick-taking game with trumps or whatever, but it is a ladder climbing game. So if the card let out is a single card, you can only play a single card. If it's a pair, you can only play a pair. If it's 2 pairs that have to be sequential to each other, then that's what someone else has to play to beat you. And then and it goes on. I mean, you can play, a 7-card straight or an 8-card straight. You can play a full house. If you have a 4 of a kind is what they call a bomb, and that's pretty much the most powerful thing in the game. And there are a few special cards. There's the one that again is a wild card or a half a point. There's the dog, which allows you to pass the lead to your partner. There's the mahjong card. So there's some special cards, but it really comes down to the play with your partner and trying to anticipate what your partner may or may not necessarily have. But the more you play with the same people, you kind of get a sense of, you look at how many cards they have left. Okay, so do they have enough to go out? Do I need to pass a lead to them, or are they pretty much done? Like they've got 4 cards left in their hand. Are they all just single cards? Just single cards that aren't worth a hoot. And so there's that kind of like you're staring at your partner and you're trying to pick up what they're throwing out to you, and then it turns out you're totally wrong and you just kind of laugh about it at the end. You do have the ability to play solo, as far as you can call a teach you or a grand teach you. If you call the grand teach you, you can declare that after you see your first 8 cards, you can call that, and that's worth, I think, 200 points. You can call teach you before you play your very first card. You're not really playing solo. You're just trying to be the first person to go out and hopefully have your partner go out second as well. So I don't know. I've gotten my family to start playing this. Now they are not quite picking up on the strategy as much as say people that have played it more, but I enjoy the fact that they're willing to play it at least. I enjoy playing it with Graeme and Eric and Dustin at conventions. I don't know. To me, it's just an addictive card game. But we used to play euchre a lot. I mean, after work, during college, during work, if we could. And this just kind of brings me back to that playing style. So that is my number 3, Teach You.
Yeah, I really enjoy Teach You. It's on my list because I haven't played it enough, and I also don't have the background of playing games with my family. The only thing we ever used to play was Whist. I didn't play cards going through high school. I played Magic. So I'm kind of missing. A lot of people really like Tichu, and they will say you used to play euchre all the time, or you play whatever. I just don't have that background of playing it, but I still enjoy Tichu. And my favorite aspect of the game is that whole strategy. At the beginning of the round, you're exchanging one card with your partner and one card with the other, basically your two other opponents. And even that card that you're exchanging with your partner is telling your partner something about what your hand is. And that whole, well, if I'd led this is what it means, that type thing. It could also be that you have really crappy cards, but there's that whole non-verbal communication of how you play, when you play it. Are you going to take a trick? Are you going to pass on it? What you're leading when you're the lead? I just love that. So, like I said, it's not on my list. I think if I had more opportunity to play it, more people to play it with, it may eventually make my top 100. But yeah, it's just outside.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those where when you're passing to the people to the left and right of you, your opponents, it's like, damn, I just gave you a 2. You gave me a 2 back, or whatever the case may. And then so the last time I played with my daughter as my partner, and she's just barely into the game. And I finally said, I said, you are allowed to pass me something good. you don't have to pass me a crappy card every time. So
my number 3 is also a card game, but slightly different type of card game. This was probably my number 1 game for the longest of time. This is a game called Race for the Galaxy. The only reason why it slipped is only because I found 2 other games that I prefer, but the same reason why I like Tichu is the same reason why I like Race for the Galaxy. Race for the Galaxy is a multi-use card game. So you are a hand of cards, and if you want to play a card in front of it, you have to pay for it, usually with the cards out of your hand, depending on which type of world it is. If it's a production world, you will play a card and you'll discard cards from your hand to pay for it. There's also military worlds that if you have enough military on your other planets, you can play the cards. But each round, you're going to be selecting an action to do. Are you going to produce? Are you going to... I forget what all the titles are. There's a bunch of different actions that everybody's going to choose. Everybody's going to pick one of those actions. If you choose one of those actions, then everybody's going to do that action. And what I love about Race for the Galaxy is if I'm looking at what you are playing, my opponent across the table, then I want to piggyback on what I think you will be doing. So if I see you have a lot of production planets that need to produce, and I have a lot of production planets that need to produce, I'm going to be looking at you saying, well, Dean's going to need to produce, so I'm not going to produce. I'm going to piggyback off of his produce, which means I can do something else. And I love that. I love the aspect of Race for the Galaxy of reading the table and trying to figure out what other people are doing and see where I can piggyback on what I know or figure you should be doing on your turn. So I'm basically, especially in a 4-player game, which I played this quite a number of times with 4 players, I am playing 4 different games of Race for the Galaxy in my head. Going, I see Lella has these cards in front of her, I see Dean has these cards in front of her, and I see Eric has these cards in front of him. Therefore, Eric will probably want to do this, Dean will probably want to do that, and Lella and I want to do the same thing. So I'm assuming Lella's going to do this, which means I can do something, I can do a 4th action, which the other 3 people hadn't taken. Because I know that they will probably want to do that. Now, it may backfire, because Dean may be looking at me saying, well, I'm assuming Graham's going to want to produce, so he's not going to play his produce. But I'd love that aspect for Race for the Galaxy, and unfortunately, it is a difficult game to teach because of the iconography and when stuff triggers. Because a lot of your cards that are in front of you will say, during phase 2, this card does this. You always have to remind people, look at your cards. We're doing phase 1. Look at all the cards that activate during phase 1 and make sure you're activating them the way you want to activate them. But when you get a group of people that have played this, the same level, that's when my secondary meta game comes into play, when you're kind of trying to read what the other people are doing. That's what I love about Race for the Galaxy. I have no expansions for it. I just love the base game for Race for the Galaxy. I played it a bunch of times on there used to be an old tablet application, so I used to play that. Played this a number of times, 4 players, 3 players, 2 players. I don't like it as much as 2 players. I like the 3 and 4 player game. But I convinced Lella this was a good game, and she will be willing to play it. She used to hate this game, but I've kind of coached her enough, kind of brought her along, that she now enjoys this one. not nearly as much as I do, which is why it's my number 3. Yeah, but Race for the Galaxy, fantastic game.
Yeah, I've only played it once, and that was 2-player with you. I mean, clearly I didn't know what I was doing with all the different iconography, and I can say that if we're playing it and you find that I'm like staring at you, trying to sense maybe what you're doing, it's not that. I'm probably just thinking, what did Graham say ended this game?
I was just about to say, you're probably thinking, how does this game end again?
Oh, yeah. How can I? Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I don't. I would play it again. I just feel like that's one of those games where if you if you are a novice versus someone who's played it a lot, you're really behind the 8 ball on that one.
Yep.
All right, my number 2 is a game that has been my number 1 for the last since 2016 when I started making a top 100. Um, and this is it. It finally slipped to number 2, and that is Eldritch Horror. Eldritch Horror by Fantasy Flight Games. To me, I mean, obviously, I love Lovecraftian Cthulhu themes. There's 2 games in my top 10 that are Cthulhu Lovecraftian, and this is one for, I had Elder Sign on here earlier, so Cthulhu or Eldritch Horror is going to take the battle against the Elder Gods to a global point. You're not just sitting in Arkham; you're going all over the globe, different countries, different cities, and you're trying to close portals and battle monsters and prevent whichever Elder God is trying to be summoned from appearing. And you're going to go all these different encounters, and what seems like a very simple encounter. I just need one success roll. You will often fail, and you'll take insanity hits or take health hits, but you can also increase your odds by bringing assets on board, which maybe will allow you to get blessed if you pass encounters because they're helping you out, or maybe you're going to go and get that machine gun that you really need to go battle this entity over here. There's a lot going on. You're collecting clues. You're trying to stop. Stop the different little schemes and portals from opening. But eventually, I mean, I've never won this game. I've played this game a lot. We've never won this game. It is a co-op game. It's a dice game, and I don't know. It's just, but the dice often fail us. We often lose, or we always lose. But I enjoy playing the game. It plays up to 8 players. I would never play 8 players. I think 4 is the max, and probably 3 is a sweet spot for it. It can drag on a bit for what it is. It's a 2 to 4 hour game. I mean, 3 is probably average. I wish it would play in a shorter amount. I wish they would do an app for this, like they did Elder Sign. If they made this into a app, I would probably only play it that way, just from the setup and the game length. If it would shave time off of those 2 things, that would be awesome. There is a lot of stuff for it, so the setup is kind of maybe your own fault for what you want to add into it. But man, I enjoy it. There's always great kind of epic moments in the game, and depending on who you're playing with, if they're really getting into it, it gets a bit comedic. But that's my number 2, Eldritch Horror by Fantasy Flight Games.
So I bought Eldritch Horror because Lella likes Arkham Horror. She likes the one before this. And I wasn't a big fan of Arkham Horror, but I said, oh, we'll try Eldritch Horror, because I heard, it's more of a globe-trotting type thing, and the encounters you have are more connected to where you are. So we got a chance to play with. The first time we played it was 4 players. And I kind of went, I don't like this, but maybe I'm playing something wrong. It's the first time we've played it. So I bugged Dean for the first couple of mod cons. I want you to teach me this game. I feel like I've missed something when I taught it, when I learned from the rule. So the last ModCon, we got a chance to play it, and I kind of ended the game and went, no, I didn't miss anything. I just don't like this game.
I mean, it's not for everybody.
Now, I had Spirit Island on my list before, and that's a fairly difficult game in terms of to win. And like you said, you've never won Eldritch Horror. At least Spirit Island, I feel like I have a chance. Eldritch Horror, and my same issue with Arkham Horror, I never feel like I even have a chance. It's like round 1, you're overcome by monsters, you are half dead, you're 3/4 insane. Round 2, it's like, well, that's not fun. So yeah, but I know an awful lot of people like it. It's just not one. It's not my style of game. My number 2 is, Dean was talking about the randomness and The variability of his game. Well, mine is my highest rated splatter game on my. Dean thought this may be my number one, but it's not. It's actually number two, and
Oh,
this is
you changed that on purpose, didn't
no.
you?
This is Food Chain Magnet. I have talked about this game. I don't think every podcast I've ever been on, I've mentioned Food Chain Magnet. It is my favorite really heavy game. And again, like I said for Antiquity, there is once the board is set up, there's no randomness in this game. Food Chain Magnet is you're running a food chain, a fast food store. And you start off with basically one or two cards that are your company. But it allows you to hire other people. And each round, you're going to be making a pyramid of people because each type of manager can have so many people underneath them. So you want to have cooks, you want to have PR people that are going to put out advertising. You want a hiring manager to go hire people. You want to train people so you can maybe upgrade your line cook to a burger chef, that type of thing. But you have to pay everybody. So you need to be making food that the houses want. But how do the people know that they want to come to your restaurant? Well, that's where your PR and your marketing people come in. You can hire like pamphlet delivery. You can have billboards. So when people buy, they say, "Oh, I want a burger and fries." But there is some player action into this game based on who is the closest person to the house that will fulfill the house's needs at the cheapest price. So if I advertise to a house and saying, by the way, we have, you want pizza and hamburgers. And my restaurant serves pizza and hamburgers, but they're slightly more expensive. So let's say Dean's got one that may be one block further away, but he's got cheaper prices. This whole kind of jockeying of making sure you're going to get the most people come to your store so you can feed them to get the money for them is where a lot of the player interaction comes. The other place that the player interaction comes into play are the things called milestones. And they tell you when you first start learning the games, you put the milestones aside because they are an added complexity to the game. But the milestones are usually the first person to do X gets a special ability. And they literally mean the first person to do that. And some of those special abilities are extremely powerful. But only the first person to achieve that will get that special ability. So if I see Dean going after the refrigerator, I'm going to say, oh, I better be doing the same thing he's doing for this turn to make sure that we both achieve the same requirements to get the refrigerator so we both get it. Because if you fill the requirements later on, too bad, the refrigerator's gone. You can no longer buy the fridge. Dean's bought the only fridge in the game. And it gives Dean the ability to store food from round to round, which is, again, extremely valuable. There is a lot going on in this game, but when you think about the overall structure, it just makes sense. You are running a company. You need the correct people under your organization so you can expand your company, to cook the food, to serve the food, to market the food, to make sure people are happy when they come in the door. But you have to pay everybody. So I love this game. I just bought the expansions for it. I don't know when I'm going to get to the expansion because the reason why this is number 2 on my list is because it's hard to get to the table and I don't play it nearly enough for it to be justified as my number 1 game. If I got to play this on a regular basis, I could easily see this being my number 1 game of all. But as it is, it's number 2, Food Chain Magnet.
I would have thought for sure it would have been your number 1, but I can understand your reasoning behind it. Now, I've offered to play this game with you, but you refuse to play with new players because you feel like it's not any fun.
Well, I refuse to play with you, yes.
So I thought it was just all new players.
No, it's just you.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. All right, my number 1. Well, here we are. Do you have any confetti we need to pop or anything? Or no? All right, my number 1 was actually Graham's number 10 on this list, and that is Mombasa. Mombasa by R&R Games, 2 to 4 players. I don't know, about 2 hours, maybe a little longer, and right around a 4 for weight. In this game, you're basically you're trying to acquire shares of stock in different trading companies that are set up on the African continent. So you're not really playing a trading company itself. You're going to dabble in all the different trading companies as far as acquiring stock, This is an area control game, but the game really focuses on your action queue, and that is your card display, because everything you do is going to center around the cards that you're going to play out of your hand on any given turn. You're going to acquire new cards throughout the game. You're going to add them to your deck, but really, it's going to focus on the 3, maybe 4 cards that you can play during the game. You're gonna play them all face down. Everyone's gonna flip them over at the same time, and then you're gonna play the cards. And you're gonna play, like, if you have 3 banana cards, you'll play all the bananas together. If you have 3 exploration cards, you'll play all the exploration cards together. So the cards you play matter, because the more of the same type you can play are going to give you better benefits or better action results. But when you're done playing all those cards, you're going to take those cards and you're going to put them above your player board. And they're going to stay up there until you recover that entire stack. So you're going to, if you play 4 cards and for 3 cards in front of you, you're going to have 3 different stacks above there. And then the next time you play 3 cards out, those 3 cards are going to go up into, 1 in the first stack, 1 in the second stack, 1 in the third stack. You're going to recover 1 stack at a time. So if you play 3 banana cards, you're going to have 3 banana cards up top in 3 different stacks. So it's going to be hard for you to be able to play them again as 3 bananas. It's a really kind of it's quite a bit of strategy as to, okay, I want to play these cards now, but it's going to take me forever to get these cards back into my hand together, because now they're separated into these different stacks. So now the next card I play, I want to make sure it kind of works with the cards that are in this stack. So when you recover it, you got a decent hand. It's quite a fascinating setup as far as how they do it. And then, of course, like I said, you're going to be, there's some bonus tiles out there that you can get. There's that book track that Graeme talked about, where you can move along that book track, but you can only move as far as the prerequisites that you can meet. And then, of course, there's the diamond track, which, if there's anything in the game that I think might be slightly unbalanced, it might be the diamond track. At least it seems like. I never really focus a whole lot on it, so maybe it's just me looking at other people going, damn, why didn't I do that? But so you can move along the diamond track as well, which will give you victory points. I wouldn't say it's a point salad. I mean, I guess it depends. Maybe it's a point side salad. There's different ways to, obviously, more than one way to get victory points. And then, of course, you're buying stocks in the different companies, and how do you influence those stocks? Well, that is by exploring out on the board and putting the little buildings, related to that correlate to that stock or that company, and expand their territory. Sometimes you're bumping other companies out and you're taking over their spot. And while it may seem like at the beginning of the game one company's doing really well, there doesn't ever seem to really be a runaway leader as far as the stock, the different trading companies. People tend to bring them back into check and kind of curb their power. And you're probably gonna have some shares in each one of them, and just hope that you pick the correct company and then can manipulate it to your benefit as best as you can. It's Alexander Pfister. So, I mean, I'm not saying that's why it's a number 1. I just really enjoy this game. And I mean, I don't know if it will, I don't know if it'll be like an Eldritch Horror where it will stay in number 1 for a long time, because there's a lot of new games, and, Maracaibo and Crystal Palace, and even, Barrage and games like that I haven't played. So it's here for now, and I'll just leave it at that.
Good pick. It was, like you said, it was my number 10. And my number 1 game was Dean's number 16. It's going to come probably as no surprise. I think the only thing surprising with Dean that it is my number 1 and not slightly lower down. What is my Stefan Fell game? My favorite of his, and that is Trajan. Dean talked about it. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but key reason why I love this game is that whole Mancala rondel aspect of different colored little pegs in a kind of circle with that are segmented up, and you have to take all the cylinders out of one segment and drop one off at a time, and wherever you end up, you want to also be making sure that where you're ending up is the action you want to take, but also that you have the right color pegs there so you can get the bonus that's connected to it. You're then going to be taking actions on the main board based on where you ended up when dropping off all your pegs. And you're going to be expanding the Roman Empire. you're going to be going and shipping. And shipping is done different ways of getting cards and playing cards. And you can, each round, the different ships will take different sets of cards. So it could be 3 equal cards will get you this many points, or 4 different cards get you that many points. You can do the building, and once you start building, you have to build connected, and those are going to give you bonus. You can go and try and manipulate the Senate. But every time you pick up and drop off the cylinders in that first action you're going into the game, depending on how many you pick up and drop off, is how far you move the little time track around. So if you only do one, he's going to only move one spot. You move all of them, he's going to zoom around, and the round's going to be over very quickly. So you also get to determine how fast you want the round to end. Sometimes you want to advance it because you're leading in something and you want it to score right then, so you can become get a better pick at the end of the round. Or it could be that at the end of the round you're going to be picking the end of game scoring. And if you're the first, you get the gold version of it, and if you're second or lower down, you're going to get the silver version of it, which won't be as many points. So you want to end it because you're top in the Senate, or do you need to maybe only take fewer actions to move that guy slower, so hopefully you can also move up on the Senate track so you get to pick your end of game scoring first. This is the point salad. You're going to be getting points for all that stuff on the main board. I love it. I've taught this game many, many times. I've played it I don't know how many times. And the reason why this beat out Food and Chain Magnet is I like them about the same, but Trajan, I can consistently get it to the table easier. There's a less of a hurdle to get this one to the table. I can teach this easier. I don't have to worry about Food Chain Magnet. If you make a mistake in the first round, you're out for the rest of the game. Trajan, you can kind of change as you go. It's a lot more fluid, a lot easier to get into, a lot easier to play, which is why it's my number 1 of all time. So that is Trajan.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. We've never played this game together, have we?
No, we haven't.
I think I could take you.
Probably.
No.
I'm really not that good at it.
Well, I mean, you could say that about a lot of games, but
That's
sure.
True. So that wraps up our top 100 games of all time. It's taken us probably about 13 hours to get through this, maybe 14 hours. So hopefully you've all enjoyed it. I did have a couple stats. I just looked at my favorite designers. So it surprised me that I had Feld and Rosenberg were both. I had 6 of their games on my list for both of them. And Splotter was second at number 3. Pfister also had 3, and one that really surprised me was Taschini. Taschini?
Taschini? Whatever.
I have 3 of their games on my list. They are from the I don't know whether it's a conglomerate, but there seems to be a couple of the Italian designers who kind of work together in groups. Quite often see, like, Simeone will work with Gili, and then Gili will work with Luciani for a game, and then Luciano will work with Simone for another game. So Taschini seems to be my favorite of that group, because I have, I think, 3 of their games. Do you have a look at any of your top designers?
Yeah, well, I didn't look at it by designers. I mean, I know Pfister's probably on there quite a bit. I did look at publishers, though, and I'm not surprised. It's just a rudimentary count. But so GMT and Fantasy Flight, I each had down as having 7 games on my top 100. And I thought Lookout would be higher, but I've actually got, Z-Man, I mean, don't hold me to this. I have them at 6 games. And then I have Lookout and Days of Wonder at 5 games each.
So I also had to look at the publishers. So my number 1 is Z-Man, and it's very hard with them because if it was originally Z-Man published it, someone else may have published it after that. So I have Z-Man at number 5, and what really surprised me was GMT at number 4. That is I have GMT, Hansman Gluck, and TMG all at number 4. So those are my the next slot down for publishers on my list. Fantasy Flight. 1 game from them.
Well, I mean, you're not into Cthulhu or Star Wars or so yeah, that makes sense.
So I think that is going to wrap this up. Hopefully everybody enjoyed this. Hopefully you are have heard a couple games that you hadn't heard of before or haven't played before, and we've piqued your interest in them. We did have 32 crossovers.
Yep.
So there's 168 games on our lists then that you should have a go look at. I think there's not a single game except for one on Dean's list, so I would say don't bother with.
I hear you.
And never know, we might do this again in a year or so because it's a lot of work to put these together.
It is, but it's interesting because there's definitely a lot of games that made my list that even though they made my list, which it sounds weird if they're on my list, I should want to play them all the time. But some of them I really want to get played again because it's been a while. And then there's certain games that were on Graham's list that I'm like, you know what, I really should give that one a try. So, yeah, it was an interesting process.
So we shall wrap this up. Until next time, thanks for watching.
See ya.